Hey everyone, it is exciting to be here today. Yes, here in Washington, it's raining as usual, but you know, at least it's not cats and dogs. But we're here dry here at the studio with Your Life Matters. Yes, I am your host for Your Life Matters, and it's just wonderful to be here. Today is Business Wednesday. Yes, it is. All you lovely business owners and those who are thinking about starting a business, this is a great opportunity to be able to gain resources that would help you to launch off or advance your business. So this is a great now. You know, with businesses, it doesn't have to be just a restaurant or a cleaning service or an auto shop. Another business is maybe writing a book. Many of us have a lot of stories that we love to tell, and we just want to know, how do I get my story out there? Well, you know what? I have given you a wonderful guest who's going to tell you how to get that done. Today, I have Jim Elstead here. He is so wonderful, a wonderful, well-known author, written 3 books himself. The one is called Comes the Retribution. The second is Questions from the North, Answers from the South. It's a sequel. And the last is Holding Back the Tides. Jim, it is so exciting to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, that is so great. You know, Jim, with your background about being an author, I bet you it was very challenging.
Yes, it was. In the beginning, I wanted to write Christian novels, but I really realized quickly people don't read novels for scripture quotes. So I wound up and I chose the Civil War, and that's another story in itself, but I chose the Civil War, and I have characters on both sides of this battle who are fighting for their God and their country.
That is so wonderful. And you're going to show us how this is going to link in some biblical perspective kind of way here, because you were explaining to me that both of them were both believers, all right, the North and the South, all right. But the thing is that at the end, it all came out to whatever that resolution is. What do you think that resolution at the end of the Civil War would be?
You mean if we could resolve it now?
If we could resolve it now.
If we could just listen to what the other people have to say and realize that I can't kill them just because they disagree with me. We have to listen with an open mind and not be thinking of my answer to their question before they even finish answering it or asking it.
Yeah. And let me tell you, Jim, I had to practice that, because sometimes people will be asking questions or they have a thought and my mind's already at the end, and I have to remind myself that's not my story. It's not my place to finish it. If just giving that listener the respect of listening to their story shows them that they're being honored, you know, which the outcome might be more positive than always interjecting.
And this also goes into married life. There are many times when I'll answer my wife's question or complaint before she finishes, and I found out if I'd kept my mouth shut, it would have been a totally different conversation than the argument we wound up having.
You know, and that's awesome. Now, you mentioned marriage. Okay. You have told me a funny story, and I want the people to know, all right? We're talking about being a book writer.
Right.
All right. And how you got started on this. Now, I know that your first book could have put people to sleep. Can you tell me the story about the first one?
Well, I got the idea in 1997. It took me 3 years to write it. It was 500 pages long.
Wow.
150,000 words. And I read it to my second wife, and she listened to it. It took me a couple of weeks to read it because we had other life getting in the way. And after I finished, she swallowed hard and said, "That's a lousy book. I won't let you publish it." It sat on the shelf from 2000 until 2009.
Wow.
When we were in a different town, she saw an advertisement for a writers club, and I joined the writers club, and we beat that manuscript and cut it up and added to it and deleted duplicate phrases, and we wound up with my first book, Comes the Southern Revolution, and it's 80,000 words instead of 150.
Wow. Amazing. It's something, tell me, this is how you got your book writing started.
I wanted to be a writer. I thought I was a writer in 8th grade. Nobody ever encouraged me. And now, that's one reason, a little side, that I sponsor a writing contest at our church. I'm involved in judging writing contests for another organization. I'll help with a spelling bee if they want me to. But it wasn't until my first wife left me and stole the kids, and I was depressed that I started writing short stories, and then I started a novel, which, by the way, that first novel has not been written. It's now on the list to be number 5.
Congratulations! Oh my goodness.
So I have 3 published, and
Yes.
one that's almost ready, maybe another year, and then another one after that.
It's so wonderful. So basically, no matter what going on in life, because life always sometimes throws a ball curve, and we think that we just can't get our dreams to come forward because we have to handle those little obstacles that comes our way. But you have proven to the listeners that you still fulfill the dream, which was becoming a writer.
Yes. I can find time every day to do something with my book. If I have to drive for an hour, I can think about my book and how I'm organizing it. I make time, and I usually do 3 writers groups that I'm involved with, and I rarely miss one of those meetings. I have a monthly meeting. I have a one-on-one with a friend that's about every 2-3 weeks, and then I have one that's once a month.
Yes.
And by going to those, it keeps me fresh, and I feel like, oh, I've got to have something ready for them, so it gives me something going. So if you've got a project, get other people, be accountable, and work with them on their project as they're working with you on yours.
Now, this is some great tidbits that you're providing for those who are writers or thinking about being a writer. But there's different type of publishing. That's always a question for a writer of what to choose here. And you talked about that, self-publishing and traditional publishing. What is the difference and who might benefit?
Well, I like both ways. And in the beginning, my first book, I found a traditional publisher in Denver, and he got excited about my book. I gave him my pitch, and he was going to publish me, and he wanted me to wait 1.5 years before I could have a hard copy. And I said, it's a Civil War book. I'm right in the middle of the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. I'm losing marketing time. And he said, I'm sorry, but I have other people ahead of you, and I need to take care of them first. I have contracts with them. I can't put you ahead. And I said, okay. So I went to look at self-publishing. Now, I'm different than a lot of people. I made an Excel spreadsheet. I took all the questions that I could think of that I wanted to ask. I went to 21 different self-publishing websites, and I compared all of them. And I narrowed it down to like 3 or 4, and then looked at it, prayed about it, and then came up with CreateSpace. Now, CreateSpace is now KDP. That's different than a lot of the self-publishing sites, and I don't want to mention any names because I'm not going to. I didn't choose them at the time. If I were to go back now, I don't know. I might choose them. But you can go and just Google, what are self-publishing tactics? What do I have to do? And you'll find a lot of them. And go through and go to their websites, come up with your questions, and then fill in what their answers to those questions are. Now, be advised, you call some of these people directly, which I did, called every one of them, and spent hours on the phone, but it was important to me to make sure I got the right one. And I wound up getting bombarded with calls from these people, and I finally said, nope, I've decided not to use you, and went on. Well, a friend of mine used one of these name brand self-publishing companies. They did the marketing for her. They did bookmarkers. They did her editing. They came up with her book cover. And when she saw what I was doing, because I got my own website designer, and my friend Mary was helping me with my getting the book uploaded to CreateSpace. We worked on the proof copy and all that. Well, when I had my book and we compared our two, she said, your book is it's a better quality book. How much did you pay for yours? And I said, well, and I did a quick total. I said, about $2,500. She dropped her jaw. She said, when my first contract was $8,500.
Wow.
And then when I told them, oh, well, my friend Jim is getting this. Can you do this for me? Well, yeah, sure. And the price kept going up. She wound up paying $13,000 for her book. She was happier with my book than hers.
Now, what was the difference? What was the difference that made it successful for you, Jim?
I was doing it for myself. My wife was supporting me and gave me input. And you mean successful for me personally, or as opposed to my friend?
For you personally, that
For me
made it
personally.
different from me. Yeah.
My dad always told me, he always encouraged me. He says, you can do anything you want. You've got the drive, you've got the enthusiasm. Just do what you know how to do first, and then go back and find somebody to help you do the rest. And so that's what I did. And sometimes I did what I knew how to do, but it was wrong. And when I went to somebody to help me, I wound up with a better product overall.
Now, the thing is that many people are looking for people like yourself to guide them and help them to be a successful book writer from here. And you're showing us what it took for you to do. Are you open to share that experience? How can somebody contact you if they have any questions or they want their book, their manuscript to be reviewed? What do you offer?
Okay. I've offered this for the past 8 years since I've been selling my books. When I'm usually I'm at Army Air Force Exchange stores, and passersby come by and they say, "Oh, I've got a book I want," and I'll say, "If you want help, here's my card. Give me a call and we can talk later when I'm not trying to sell books." And very few people call. Very few people are motivated to really sit down and do it. And and that's one reason why I'm here. When Belinda told me, "Oh, can you help me get the message out?" Yes. And if you want to contact me, you can email me at comesthesouthernrevolution@gmail.com. And once we find you have a viable product and a project and what you want to do, then we can exchange phone numbers and maybe we can talk. And most of the time, you're going to be able to Google and get a lot of information. But if you say, "Wait a minute, this self-publisher is telling me this, is this true?" Give me a call. Send me an email.
So let's mention that email again. And folks, it's going to be on the bottom of your screen as well. So I'm hoping that you're interested in giving Jim a call. This is a good way to save money in a way by asking someone who's gone through the process. So Jim, give us that email again.
comesthesouthernrevolution@gmail.com. I regret the day that I had such a long website, but and my email address, but I'm not going to change it now.
It's there. It's your brand. So this is good.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Now, Jim, I know you've been in got involved with self-publishing, traditional publishing. People are trying to find the ways to get their story out. But I know that there's a different avenue, which is blogging. All right. And so have you ever thought about blogging? Have you tried blogging?
I've thought about blogging, and I've never really gotten into it. My second wife was ill, and I was her caregiver. The housing crisis in 2008 and 2009, that took a hit, and there was a lot of things I had to do. I had to quit my my job to take care of my wife. So there's blogging and podcasting. I never really got into that. I never really looked into it. I just didn't have the time.
Now, folks, let me tell you, this is his first podcast event today. And I'm so excited that you came out here and able to share your story on your first podcast. Yeah. What do you think about that?
It's exciting. A little nervous. I drove up from Portland this morning and prayed all the way up saying, "Okay, Lord, don't let me make a fool of myself."
But it's what makes it fun. Yes.
Okay. Now, there's a couple of things I do want to get out. Now,
Go ahead.
When you go to a traditional publisher, and it's a viable option, you need to query them and send a letter. But before you do that, you need to do your homework, or they're going to just take your letter and throw it in the trash. Each one of them on their website, they're going to tell you what type of publisher they are, what kind of books they're looking for. If you want to write a Christian novel, a Christian coming-of-age novel about a teenager who's going through a lot of struggles and dealing with drugs and whatever, don't go to a website for a company that sells romance novels. You're not going to get a second look. So look for publishers in your genre that are looking for books in your genre. Some of them will say, send me a chapter. Some will say, send me a query letter. Some will say, send me a proposal of what you want. If you're writing a nonfiction book, they may say, send us a proposal. I'm looking into what it takes to become a missionary, and what you have to do to prepare to go to the mission field and go on deputation. Well, if you want to do that, they may say, okay, give us your outline first, and then what are your credentials? Are you a pastor of a church who's never been having to raise money? Or are you a missionary who's come back from the field and you've raised your support in 2 years and others have been taking 3? Well, okay, now you've got a way of doing it. Maybe you've got something we can sell.
That is so wonderful. Now, like you said, you gave us some tidbits of being careful how to find the right traditional publisher. You gave us tidbits in regards to how to self-publish and the things that we need to look out for. The other thing I want to know is, how did you market yourself? How did you get people to know who you were?
I probably haven't done it well. At first, I was having a printing company down the street print out my bookmarkers, and I learned how to do it myself. It's probably 1/10 the cost. I now have a file. I go to do a book signing. If I need them, I take 50. I get 4 or 5 to a page. I cut them up on a paper cutter, and I put them out on my table. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't have to be super fancy when you do some of these things. I've had friends that have gone out and spent like $1.50 a piece for laminated bookmarkers. I've got cardstock, and I run it through my Canon printer at home, and I cut them up, put a rubber band around them, and I go to my book table, which I'll be there tomorrow, setting up at Fort Lewis, and I'll just lay them out. And as people want them, they'll get them.
Wow. Now, you're going to be at Fort Lewis tomorrow. What is the time that you're going to be there?
I usually get there about 9:30, and I'll start selling, but usually people start coming in around 10, and I'll be there till 5.
Now, are there any other locations that you visit?
I have done coffee shops.
Mm-hmm.
I did a library, and I wouldn't recommend doing a library. People don't go to libraries to buy books. They go to libraries to borrow books. But there's a reason why I did that one as a favor to a friend, so fine. I've gone to coffee shops. I was real successful with coffee shops. But some coffee shops don't want the distraction. So you have to go with the flow.
Now, do you have any special events or special program that you're getting started after this?
Yes. As it turns out, in the past 2 days, since I wrote my outline that I gave you for this meeting, and a friend of mine at church has a vision, and as missionaries come in with a story, and some of them are very exciting stories, and I don't want to share any of them now because I don't have permission to share what this missionary has been through, but some of them are exciting, and we're going to help them, and if we have to, we will ghostwrite their story while they go about doing whatever the Lord has them to do.
Now, how are they using their stories? Have they shared how they're going to use their stories?
They are planning on, as they go about, either if they're still a missionary, and they go from church to church, speaking, giving sermons, visiting their existing supporters, or maybe they're looking for new supporters. On their table, they want to have a book of their story that they can sell and help raise money to fund their ministry.
Awesome, awesome. And the thing is, Jim, is that you brought so much to the table in regards to what it takes now to really be an author and to be careful on the type of publishers that we're looking for, whether it be traditional or self-publishing. Blogging, is something to think about. It helps to expand that opportunity of people knowing who you are, get to know, where your mind is at in regards to creating these stories that you've done from here. And I love the new idea that's coming up here, supporting different missionaries of knowing how to write their stories.
Right.
So they can use that tool for churches to help support their cause. So this is pretty awesome from here. Now, Jim, once again, there's many people out there that wants to know how to write a story. There's some that might have manuscripts already done, but they're kind of hesitant to share it with somebody. But you're here right now to at least help them to know how they can reach you so they can get some ideas, some opinions, some tools. How can they reach you, Jim?
They can go to my comes the Southern Revolution at gmail.com. I don't want to give out my phone number and have everybody and his brother calling me with a project that's really not viable. But if you email me, tell me what you want, I will at least email you back. If you give me your contact information, I will call you and we can discuss it.
That is so. What now? How many years, all right, have you been writing, and how many books total?
Actively, I started writing in '97 for 3 years, took a break for 9, and then since '09 to now, I've been writing quite a bit.
Okay.
I've had 3 books, working on a 4th, and actually the 5th, I was a third of the way through. It was going to be number 1. And my first book that I published cut in front of it, and it became number 2, and then number 2 cut in front. So my very first book that I had the inspiration for is now number 5 on my list, but it's a third of the way through. Who knows what I'm going to do with it when the time comes.
Now, you were talking to me earlier about this elephant and how we take care of an elephant, which is one bite at a time. So the thing is here, I know that you stated that you're assisting with other people right now, trying to help them or support them in their writing as well as doing your own book from there. How do you manage that time? What are some of the tidbits of time management that people need to understand when it comes to writing?
I've set aside the time for my critique groups. One critique group meets at a library the 3rd Sunday of every month, and it's 2 hours. And I go there, and they probably critique some of my work 3 or 4 times a year. But that's the format they have. And they have a critique of one of the writers, and then they have a program of how to market, how to edit, how to do whatever. So I set that time, and I purposely go and give them my some of my work, and then they beat me up, and then I go and make whatever changes I think are valid.
Yes, yes.
I have another one that meets every Tuesday night, and I try to bring them a chapter a week. So I set a goal for a chapter a week to have ready for them. And we went last night, and I read for about 10, 12 minutes, and after we finished, they had some criticisms, and I looked at them and said, okay, well, some of the things I justified, and they said, oh, we understand. Mm-hmm. Now, one lady in one meeting, she said, you're writing a historical fiction. How do I know what is historical and what's not when I'm reading your novel? And I had to look at her, and I said, if you have to ask that question, maybe this isn't your genre, and it's not something you enjoy writing or reading, and thank you very much for considering my work.
You kept it very humble.
Yeah. So, and then I have a friend that I met doing Civil War reenacting. All of my books are Civil War related. So I would dress up in period costume, put a table out in the middle of nowhere, and isn't technology great? I had a card swiper and the internet, and I could accept somebody's credit card out in the middle of nowhere. And so I met my friend Roger at a reenactment, and he's a writer also. And we meet about every 2 or 3 weeks, and we will beat up each other's work and make it better. So I've got 3 groups. Sometimes they'll see the same chapter, but each look at it from a different way, and it makes me a better writer to look at and get criticism. I am not afraid of somebody stealing some of my work in one of these critique groups. I've in 8 years, no, 10 years, 11 years of doing this in critique groups, I've never had that problem.
But you know what? It sounds like they're valuable resources because sometimes you have your vision, you have your dream, you're writing your story out, but you're not sure if it's comprehensible, it makes sense, that the person can really click to see what you're trying to say. So having those critique groups helps you to really fine tune your message.
Yes.
So that the reader that reads your story can be able to understand where you're coming from.
Sometimes I get blinders on it, and when somebody else hears me read it out loud, because that's the Tuesday night group, I have to read my work. When they hear me read it out loud, they say, that doesn't make sense. So they ask questions, and then I can improve it.
What do you say to somebody that might have a writer's block? Real quick there. How does, because some people, they might be, a little disappointed trying to figure out why they just can't put that first word on paper.
Boy, that's rough. A couple of things to do. Well, one thing that I would suggest doing, everybody has something new happen to them every day. When you can't figure out what to do on your story, take a break from your story, from whatever your project is, and sit down and write about that person you met today. What was it about them that attracted you? Was it a clerk in the store and you were able to share something personal with or whatever? So write about that. You know what happened there. And as you get the juices flowing, and kind of like a warm-up exercise for an athlete, you do some jumping jacks and push-ups and whatever to get your muscles limbered up. So if you were to do that, you could probably almost roll right back in and get started on your story.
That is so wonderful. Folks, this has just been so exciting, Jim, to understand the responsibility as being a writer, understanding the type of publishing that we can pursue, whether it be traditional or self. Blogging could be an exceptional tool to use as one of our marketing tools. People get to know more about us. I appreciate how you're showing us how, if we had a writer's block, knowing how to just take that break and, find something else that will help generate that story to do like you said, an exercise to the brain, warm up the brain again to get started. So this is just so wonderful in bringing this together in regards to that. You've shown us different other ways as well.
One other thing I need to show
Do you really?
Real quick. If you've got a project, you need an elevator pitch. If you were to meet a Hollywood producer, could you tell him about your project in 30 seconds? So you need to be able to do that. When I'm at my book signing table, I've got my pitch, and I've given it so often that people can interrupt me, and I can answer their question and go back and wind up giving my whole pitch in the matter, and they think we're just having a conversation. They don't know that I'm listening to them, but I'm working on getting my information out. And you need to be able to do that succinctly.
Powerful. That way the person knows exactly what you're trying to have them to receive, and understand about what you're trying to sell.
Right.
And offer. This is so great. I'm excited. So, Jim, once again, thank you so much for coming on Your Life Matters. This is so awesome. Once again, Jim's information on the bottom of on the line there. If you have any questions, just email him and he'll be happy to call you. Until next time.